here's what you're going to have to be able to do by hand. If you're asked to rewrite an equation from standard form or intercept form into vertex form, the way that you're going to do that is you're going to follow all those same steps as I showed you in completing the square. Okay, but there's a slight change because you're only going to be working in one side of the equation. Okay, so here's the steps for rewriting it in vertex form. Okay, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to write the equation in the form of x squared plus bx. Oops, hang on just a second. I'm going to rewrite how I describe this. Okay, what you're going to do here is you're going to group your variable terms together. Okay, so we're going to group them in parentheses here. So step 1, we're going to group our x squared minus 10x into parentheses, and we're going to leave a space. That space in between there is going to be where you complete the square. All right, so all we did is we grouped them, separated the constant away a little bit, okay? And we're going to work in two groups. We're going to work inside our parentheses, and we're going to work outside the parentheses. Okay, so the next step is the step of completing the square. And so once again, here's what completing the square involves. It involves taking 1/2 of b, okay, and then squaring that, and then add it inside the parentheses, and undo it, so you're going to subtract it outside the parentheses. Okay, so here's the whole process. We're going to take half of our b value. So our b value is -10. Half of that is -5. Square it. -5 squared is 25. So we're going to add that value inside our parentheses. Now to balance our equation, instead of working on each side of the equal sign, we're just working on the right side. We're just staying on one side of the equation. So in order to balance it, we have to undo it or subtract it on the outside. So we get a -25 on the outside here to maintain the balance of that equation. And the next thing we're going to do is rewrite the trinomial within the parentheses as a binomial square. Again, the whole reason we chose this process to complete the square is so these three terms wind up being that special factor form. It's a perfect square trinomial, therefore it can be factored into a binomial square. The first term will be x, the second term will be half of this b value. So half of -10 again was a -5. And then on the outside, we just combine our like terms. So 6 and a -25 nets you -19. And so we have our vertex form. So if I were to ask you questions about this, you could locate the vertex. What would the vertex for this equation be? The value of x that would give you a 0 in here is 5, and then the vertical transformation is -19. So there's your vertex. What would be the axis of symmetry? X equals whatever the x coordinate is. So these could be the three different things I'd ask you. The actual vertex form, the interpretation of it as the vertex, or the interpretation of it as the axis of symmetry. All right, try that problem that's up on the board right there on your own. I'll write it here as well. But see if you can rewrite the vertex form for y equals x squared minus 16x plus 8. All right, so the process to go through is to group your variable terms. So in parentheses, we're going to put our two terms with the x, put our constant on the outside of that. We're going to complete our square. Okay, when we complete the square, we take half of our b term, so half of negative 16 is negative 8, square that, plus 64. Now, because we added a 64 on the inside, we have to undo it on the outside, so subtract a 64 on the outside to maintain the balance of that equation. And then what we can do is we can rewrite it as a binomial square. First term x, second term was half of b, so minus 8. And then we just combine our like terms out here, a plus 8 and a negative 64. That leaves you negative 56. And you get your vertex form. Any questions on that process? All right, we're going to add a level of difficulty. Austin?
I don't really understand how we get from one way of the result to how
Right here?
Yeah.
So this form right here, the whole reason we went through these steps and chose this number 64.
Oh, I understand how we got that. I don't understand how we did that.
Well, so the whole reason we did that is so that we can now factor this expression. So if you were to just factor, if I asked you factor x squared minus 16x plus 64, okay, it fits the pattern of this is a base of x squared and a base of 8 squared. If you double the product of this, do you get this middle term? Yeah, so this fits the pattern of x and 8 with the sign of a negative. And so that's the same thing that we did here. In fact, I mean, that's why we chose 64. This process right here chooses the correct number so that that pattern will always work.